Hi.
Okay, so it's our first live here, and I'm going to try not to cough too much. I've got a cold. She's looking fabulous. I'm looking headphoney. This is fun. This is quite new. So today we're going to be talking about fear in the world and how to be with it in your body. We got a letter from one of our listeners
A
asking
letter,
how.
Stephanie? Do we get a letter?
In the mail. Yeah, we got an Instagram message from one of our listeners who was wondering how to stay with herself in her body despite all the darkness that's happening in the world right now. And I think so many of us are experiencing that directly and indirectly. We live in these unprecedented times where we're apprised of everything that's going on near and far, and we're really feeling that in our bodies and not having a lot of time to connect with it or even knowing how to do that. So we're going to walk you guys through a couple of practices to help you be with your body and with the reality of what's going on outside in your world or with your people. And I'll hand it over to G.
Yeah, I mean, if you're used to being with us on the podcast, you're used to starting with a body connection practice. We're changing things up a bit. We're going to give you a practice during the episode, but feel free to take your time to just take a moment to connect in with yourself. So, Steph talked about or alluded to, there's a lot of hard things going on in the world right now. And some of us feel that really deeply. And some of us, like me, sometimes need to close my world off a little bit to that because it feels like it's too much. So even if you're not acutely aware of some atrocities going on in the world right now, find a way to see how this relates to your everyday life because we create a lot of stress in our everyday lives just without the horrors of the world. And so hopefully you find something from our practice today that just helps you feel a little bit more sturdy, a little bit more grounded, a little less like caught up in the loops of your mind and like big hard sensations in your body.
Yeah. Can I say something here? Because you made an interesting point. I can't remember how you phrased it, but I know you're busy with a lot of real life close circle stuff. And so you're not, keeping on top of political things or whatever. So I want to kind of address how differently we'll all be interacting with this and how it might affect us. And so I always think of you as this soft, sweet, gentle, body-based person, and I'm sort of more heady and hard. So I like to interact with this political stuff as kind of a broad way. Socio-political, I'm interested. Um, and I have to harden myself against it because it's so awful. But I can do that. Like that's natural
Mhm.
for me to do.
Mhm.
So I just want to name that there's going to be different ways that we're interacting with the information out in the
Yeah.
world, and it'll be either closer or further away. Like literally, like you might know people who are experiencing very difficult things, or you might be one of those people, or you might be quite adjacent to it and just either interacting with it or not.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you see yourselves in some of that? Do you get taken away into the spiral sometimes of all the hard that's going on in your own life and in the world and in the people you care about? Is that a thing for you? You can comment. This is like the first time we get to actually interact with you. So, I'm very excited.
Mm.
So for those of you who do we want to get right into the practice stuff? Is that helpful?
I think so. Yeah, you'll probably say some things about it as you do it. So yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So the practice for those of us who tend to, and I don't even want to say those of us because I find myself, I do both versions. I do the version of I can really rev myself up and get very activated about something I have very little or no control over. And then it sort of takes over. And I can also be, like you said, hardened or boundaried or very much of people need me. I got things to do. I got to get stuff done. And I'm not really feeling the heaviness or even the realness of what's going on in the world or in my life in that moment until way later. And I want to collapse in exhaustion, like, oh, maybe that was sort of taxing on my system. So I think we're going to walk you through two different types of practices that help depending on what you're noticing, right? Which dance you're in. I just want to take a break. It's a lot of talking. Because I can feel myself getting revved up, right? Are you
Yeah.
all practicing noticing the difference between feeling revved up versus feeling like, oh, this feels like I'm still here. I'm still engaging with life in the world. But like, it's like the snow globe, the snowflakes that are settling. And I really like that feeling. So I'm just trying to create some of that feeling for myself right now. Okay. So if you tend to spiral, here's what we're going to practice. Let's place a hand somewhere on your body that feels supportive if you want to. If that's not your jam, that's totally okay. Maybe you just want to feel your butt in the chair, your feet on the floor. And we're going to practice saying one thing out loud. And it's going to be one thing like this. Something that feels scary for me right now is, or something that's hard for me right now is, or something that's terrible in the world right now is, right? Whatever that is. And just take one moment to feel it. That's all. And then like shake that off actually.
Immediately wanted to shake it
Yeah,
off.
shake it
Yeah.
off. And then use this one. And the reality is also, right? So what else, what is different? What is neutral or different and a little bit better or different and a lot better? That's also true. So I might say there's horrible things that I'm reading about on IG these days. I'm going to feel that for a moment. And then the reality is I'm here with you all right now on like the first episode of this live podcast. And I feel very happy about that. I'm going to be in this moment for a bit and really feel that. And just notice how it feels to like name both truths. They're both true. We just tend to name more and more and more of the thing that feels hard and completely activate ourselves to the point that we're overwhelmed and actually have no clarity to help anybody, including ourselves. So, this is a way of slowing it down. Name one thing that's hard, feel it for one breath, and then name another thing that's different, neutral, different, a little bit better, and let yourself feel that too.
Yeah, but.
I love the yeah buts. I say, bring on the yeah buts.
So what comes up immediately for me is guilt and some like indirect activation, all to do with guilt, right? So it's like,
Perfect.
yes, we're in this moment, but all the horrible stuff that I mentioned a moment ago is still happening. And how could it be that I'm just here with you feeling a moment that isn't completely charged?
Yeah.
But
I love it. Okay. So I always say, welcome all your yeah buts. It's good that you have yeah buts. Say, okay, well, then let's do it again. Let's run through it again. Right now, part of me feels guilty. Just say that out loud and see if you want a comforting hand somewhere on your body. Feel that for a moment. And then the reality is, and it is true. Like it is true that I'm not in that, right? You said something like, how can it be possible that whatever? I can't remember exactly what you said. And like we try to sit with, how could it be possible this and that? And we activate ourselves again. How about just sitting with, and that's just what it is right now. I'm not there. I'm in this room. I actually know where you are right now. Right. So if I were Stephanie, I would say, okay, part of me feels guilty that all this goodness, like, or all this hard stuff's happening out in the world and I'm not experiencing it. And right now, the reality is I'm in a place where I'm safe and there's the sun outside and the beach is outside. And that is just the reality. And you could either choose to enjoy the reality and enjoy the absence of threat in this moment because there's no threat to you right now, Steph. Or you can be like, well, there's an absence of threat now right now, but let's just rev myself up anyways and feel like crap. And I
yeah.
still can't help anybody who's going through something hard. But now I also
Yeah.
feel crappy.
Well, I think there's this is so important, the parts bit, right? Because if my people are actually in danger and I'm just here at the beach,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to acknowledge that those parts exist and give some energy to all of that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a huge piece in here about privilege and like a lot of shadow elements of guilt that we associate with privilege. And so it sort of feels like we're addressing the guilt by staying in that revved up place or taking on some kind of shame because we happen to be in a position where we're not having to endure something so directly, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Um, and I remember, so I did social work for many years, and I remember there was a woman, actually, this was an indirect story, but it was very powerful. A woman had come from the Congo, and I can't begin to describe the horrors of what she witnessed in her life. And she was involved in these social work programs in Toronto. And so she was having to interact with a lot of privileged people
Mm-hmm.
who were working in administration and support roles in those programs who were expressing that guilt. Um, and sort of crapping on government systems and things that we naturally do when we're trying to express some guilt and we don't really have access to our parts in those ways. And so we just take it on like an identity, like our privilege is bad and evil, and we should be self-flagellating for whatever reason. And this woman just said basically like a huge like, what? Screw you, was basically her message. If I was in your position, I would be having a good time. Like, you are way
Mm-hmm.
privilege that you find yourself not in the situation that I've come from. And I'd like you to please not waste that.
Yes. Really hear what Steph's saying, because I think this is really important. Right? It's incredibly significant that many of us have the privilege of not living in direct contact with really horrific things. And I think it's important to recognize that and do good with that. Whatever that means to you, you have extra capacity that isn't needing to be used to live with some of the horrors that are going on. So, what are we going to do with that capacity? And I don't mean you got to go out there and change the world, but just noticing like, if you're a more regulated person, you have more to contribute to yourself, to the people in your small inner circle, and then it ripples out, right? You might even have more capacity to do bigger things, but that capacity doesn't come from guilting and shaming yourself, right? That might rev you up for a bit to be able to go out there and do something that you feel like contributes, but you're going to burn out at some point. It's not sustainable. It's not energy that's sustainable. So, how could you enjoy, like Steph, like enjoy that in this moment you're in Mexico and you have some reprieve from some of the day-to-day tasks you might typically have. You have reprieve from like horrible things happening. It's not happening to you right where you are right now. And how can you rest in that so that your system has more ability to contribute something to the people in your day, to the people in the world? If you sat in that room right now and revved yourself out about every horrible thing going on in the world, you wouldn't have capacity to be here on this podcast with me right now. Right. So I think that's important. And to what that lady was saying, unless someone has, let me put it this way, the average person and those who are enduring pain, generally speaking, I think it's a fair assumption to say that probably 99.9% of those people don't necessarily, they might want their own pain to suffer and the pain of those around them, but they don't want other people who are not experiencing that pain to also suffer. Like, that's not what they're wanting, right? That doesn't
They
help
might
them.
like support from the people who are not suffering, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just recognizing that that's a very human thing to feel guilty. And then we get the personal authority, the choice of, do I want to rev up that feeling of guilt through more and more things that I say to myself about why I should feel guilty, right? Or do I want to take a moment and like maybe feel my chair, maybe look at the room around me and notice that the absence of threat actually settles me. I'm seeing the mountains with snow on it outside, and that feels pleasant. And now I actually can add a more regulated human into the mix. Yeah. Mhm.
For those of us, like, we're talking about people who are actively directly impacted by awful things in the world, and those who are not, especially in North America. We're just watching this on the news. Maybe we have people in these places, but a lot of us don't. Um, and we're still feeling really activated about that. And I kind of want to address the shadow elements there. And you use terms like we're revving ourselves up, right? We're watching the news, we're freaking out about, AI and wars in the world. Um, if you're not in a position of being in direct contact with those challenges, notice that, um, and take a beat and have a look at where you're revving yourself up and why. I think there's a lot more pleasantness that some of us have the privilege to connect with. And for whatever reason, subconsciously, we're not. We're still
Mhm.
engaging in these ways that rev us up and freak us out. And my question to you is why? What are you doing and why are you doing it? What is that
Mhm.
serving? What part of you is that giving some expression to? And how can you be a bit more here now in your reality, which is a lot more narrow and probably a great deal more pleasant?
Right. And like you might have a lot of fight energy, right? Or a lot of sadness. And are you letting that come out and move in your system in some way? So we're not talking about shutting down what you feel. We're saying, can we give like a space and a time to cry the tears, to heave, to like just cry in someone's lap about how awful something is and how much it's impacting you. Or like take we've been taking dish towels and just whipping them on the bed because that's what we have. And like releasing that frustration and anger that you have of all the like, injustices that there are and move some of that energy and then bring some awareness to and what is decent and good right now. And
Yeah.
so I by no means want to minimize horrible things going on out there that we're witnessing, hearing about, or some people are actually living in or have loved ones living in. And I'm not trying to say, oh, this tiny practice is going to make the whole world better. Although I do think this tiny practice is going to make the whole world better, but it doesn't, I'm not, I don't want to dismiss the magnitude of horrible things. Um, I just want us to know that if you rev yourself up to feeling horrible, you're not really helping anyone either, right? So why not let yourself feel the hard thing and then switch focus to what's a decent and sort of okay thing? And this makes me actually think about Viktor Frankl. If anyone's read his book, The Man's Search for Meaning, and he was in the Holocaust, like in the concentration camps, and I believe his whole family is taken out. And his book talks about finding the purpose and the meaning and the suffering and the pain. And I imagine one of the things he had to do was like feel the reality of how bad it is and also be able to switch gears and switch focus to something else, at least for a moment, right? We're not trying to say bypass things and just put on a happy face and nothing exists. But most of us who tend to spiral spend an disproportionate amount of time hanging out in the yuckiness and not as much in the other side. So this is the idea of like name one thing that's hard, feel it for a moment. Name another thing that's decent or better, right? And doing it that way. And this is a shortened version of what we sometimes teach in priming. Another way to do this is one thing that's horrific in the world or one thing I'm really stressed about in my life right now is, and just name that thing and feel it for a moment. And then I like the middle part. So this is a three-part thing. And right now, something I feel my body touching is. So I feel my right foot on my left leg. I just feel that there for a moment. And right now, something I see is the painting on the wall. And I'm going to look at that for a moment. And then I might switch to, and one thing that's decent right now, one thing that's true and decent is I'm going to watch my kids play sports this weekend. And that always makes me happy. Right. And even as I say that, I can feel like a different warming in my heart center here. I'm like, oh, that's sort of nice. Right. It doesn't discount the other thing that's hard, but I'm not living in it.
Yeah,
And
takes you out of the swirl.
we're talking often about things that we have no control over either. That's like the thing. It's like we can't even fix that thing. We can't make the horrible thing go away, but I'm just revving myself completely up, right?
Yeah.
That seems like not a great use of our energy. In the cases that there is something you can do to make something a little bit better, it's going to be easy to do that the more regulated and settled you are,
Yeah.
right?
So there's another layer here that I wonder if you can address, which the listener did ask about, and I think we all encounter this, is communicating with people about these things.
Mhm.
So in her case, from a physical location of more privilege, having to interact with people in that environment and holding the reality that, back home things are very, very difficult. And the people I'm interacting with day to day don't know that. It's this concept of, you never know what somebody's holding inside. So be nice to everybody. But what are the practical, how to express that or how to interface with people who don't know what's happening for you and might not be sensitive in the ways that would be helpful?
I mean, when hearing your question, my gut instinct is be honest. Be honest with there's a lot happening for me right now. I know that what you're asking me to do sounds simple, and any other time I've actually managed to do that for you very well. But today I'm sitting with XYZ, or this month I've been noticing that I'm feeling a bit XYZ. And what you're asking me to talk about right now feels like a bit too much, or what you're asking me to do right now feels beyond my capacity. Can we revisit this and make a plan that works for
Right.
both of us?
Yeah.
Right? That's sort of the
So
simplest way for me to think about that.
yeah, that makes sense. And then I'm thinking about different personalities and activations. So I can imagine you encountering that sort of situation. And I can picture it. You would slow down, you would breathe, you would feel your feet, and then you'd deliver some compassionate sentence. Whereas I would not. I jump into fight energy right away. So in those moments, I would need some conscious mechanism by which to take a pause and to remember myself so that I didn't go on the attack, you know?
Yes, yes.
Um,
I got
well,
something for you.
great.
And I'm not saying I am proud that for the most part, I can come either back to that sort of more regulated response or I can repair, right, with someone. But that's not the state I'm always in. And sometimes it's like I need to push that frustration into the wall. And the wall is a great one because the wall has a lot of like hard feedback. It gives, it doesn't move with you with that pressure you push into it. Right. And so it's a great way to move some energy in that frustration, whacking the pillows. Someone said we were doing this exercise of tantruming, conscious tantruming, and we talked about, oh, pool noodles. Just cut up a pool noodle and just whack the crap out of your couch or your bed and like move some of that energy. So when you say my fight, I just typically go into my fight energy. Yay, ding, ding, ding. That excites me because that means what's happening in my body is something wants to and needs to move and get out of my system. When we don't
Yeah,
notice that's happening or we don't honor that, what happens is we use our fight in our words with people. We use
yeah,
that energy in the words and then we say things that we later regret or we don't regret, but then we have consequences that we have to live with. Right? So honor when you have fight energy and
yeah,
explore healthy ways to move some of that energy. But at the same time, and this is a nuance, you're going to need to find where your practice edge is like, don't spend 2 hours in your fight energy. That means you're probably revving yourself up more than's actually there
yeah.
because feelings pass, sensations shift. right? They
Yeah,
can only
they do.
stay for that long when we add more thoughts to it and more thoughts.
Yeah. So, gee, what you're describing, bashing pool noodles, whapping towels on beds, pushing into walls. To me, that sounds like very good regular practice to move some of the stuff out of your body.
Hmm.
And that will give you less of a charge day to day. Like if you're doing that outside of moments when you're actually charged,
Yeah.
it'll still cause you to be a bit less charged when you're out in the world. When I try to, I'm mapping what you just described onto an in the moment real life situation, and where
Hmm.
say you're in line at the bank and somebody
Yeah.
says something insensitive, you could ask for a pause and go push on a wall.
Yeah.
But I think a parallel that would work for me at least, and would give me, because I have this sort of metaphysical inner structure, I like to connect to something larger. So I think I'm thinking about pushing my feet into the ground, which would give me that push energy, moving some of that fight energy, but it would also connect me to the earth, which would
Hmm.
connect me in that moment to my people and to something greater. And hopefully I'd be able to find some soothing in that in the moment.
Yes. Right. And so, really, what this is about is we need to know ourselves. If you don't know yourself, you're not going to know what could be helpful. And a lot of us have to discover ourselves actually and learn what's helpful and learn in which moments it's helpful and recognize that what was helpful yesterday might not be the thing that feels helpful right now. So, like, say last time someone pissed you off at the grocery store, pushing into your feet helped, but today it's not, and you really just want to smash that person. What now? Right? So then it might be, oh, I'm gonna like just give my hands a good squeeze. It could be I'm gonna roll my shoulders. It could be I need to stand behind this person and just tap somewhere on my body and remind myself I really don't want to be taken away for assault right now. So let's not smash that guy's head in or scream at him. Right? So this we're also talking about fragmentation. It means in that moment your fight energy feels so large that you're only with the anger and the frustration. But we've lost touch with the part of ourselves that cares about humans. We've lost touch with the part of ourselves that doesn't want to go to jail. Right? Those parts exist too, I think, in us, right? And I'm being using an extreme example, but we want to slow down or connect like enough to remember those other parts of us that we want to bring into the mix to make the decision about what next. How do I want to handle this next? Right. And if you've never practiced any of this stuff, let's not pretend you're going to be able to do it in that moment. Right. And expect yourself to, because that's really unfair. You're not going to be able to. And then you're going to shame yourself for it. That sucks. So if you think about, hey, if I were to encounter that, you probably wouldn't be able to do some of these things. Yay, good news. It means you have awareness. Oh, I probably need to practice when I'm on my own and don't actually need these tools.
And you can actually discover that edge without going there, you know? If you've lived in a place where you're just repressing your anger and your fight energy all the time, you can't just jump to, now I'm going to feel my feet and it'll be pleasant and nobody's going to go to jail. You might need to explore those edges by flipping out and discovering what feels true or what doesn't. And, oh, I went somewhere that I didn't want to go. And next time I'm going to have to do something different and take on some practices that will help me move some of that energy in a healthy way.
Right. And if you can flip out in a way that's not harming you or someone else, that's ideal. If you end up flipping out on someone and like maybe you said some things that you regret you shouldn't have said, okay, whatever. That sort of sucks, but it's repairable, generally speaking. Right. So, but most of us don't give ourselves the opportunity to have a contained freak out. Like an intentional contained freak out, which is why when we're running CRT, conscious relationship training, we're prescribing people like have a 21-day tantrum practice, and people are like, what? And we got a message today actually saying, hey, like, I didn't really feel the anger during the practice for the 21 days, but I did notice all these other shifts in my life. Cool. Right? We have so much fight energy, most of us, contained and locked down and suppressed. And then it just takes one tiny thing that doesn't go our way, and we're like, "Mm."
Familiar? Anyone? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, there's that. There's a little funny thing I thought of when we tend to rev up and why we're talking about containment, which is like, let me create the actual parameters around feeling and expressing some of this stuff, which is when we were doing the practice earlier, we named one thing that was hard or horrible. We felt it for a moment, and then we shifted our focus to something that was like decent and sort of okay. What it reminds me of is the guardrails at the bowling alley. You can still chuck the ball, like, for me, I say chuck because I'm not a very good bowler, like, you can still chuck the ball down the thing. I was gonna call it a runway, I don't it's not a runway, whatever that thing's the alley? The lane.
Bowling alley. Yeah. The
But
lane.
when you have the guardrails up, then, like, it has a place where it's, like, the ball's not flying across 5 lanes and whatever, like, it has a place to go. And it doesn't get out of hand and out of control and spiral you to this really hard place that's even harder to get out of, right? So the question is, in what way do you want to place some guardrails up for you where it's not wrong or bad to feel fear or shame or despair or anger, but it helps you just dip your toe into it and then dip back out. Dip your toe in and dip back out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also lets your body know there's a place for this energy, right? If you know that you're going to have, say, something like a tantrum practice, it's not a mystery to your system where this fight energy is going to go, which creates those guardrails you're talking about.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I wanna relate this to can I relate this to someone who I've been working with, like, going through some really tough medical stuff right now? Scary and tough medical stuff. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Go that direction? So this is someone who's received, like, really hard medical news to deal with and scary and so many unknowns, where it would be very fitting and understandable to just feel distraught and terrified. And how do you learn to be with that, right? Um, and not give up, and also not put on a smiley face and pretend like everything's fine to try to convince yourself and your loved ones that everything's okay. And so we spent time practicing how do we just name the real fears that are here one at a time and then focus on the right now. And right now, I am alive. And today, I actually sort of feel decent, right? The today, I actually sort of feel decent. Like when we talk about when we're telling someone something that's hard, that usually ends up being like a 0.5 second blip in the whole conversation. And then we cycle again into like what's hard and bad. And we don't want to pretend like what's hard and bad isn't real and that it doesn't have gravity, but we wanna hang out for just a bit longer in the and what is also true right now, in the part that gives us a moment of reprieve. And to be able to walk with someone through this practice when they have every right to feel distraught and terrified, crawl into bed and give up and talk themselves into a dark, dark spiral, and see the relief that it gives even for a moment. It really, like, warms my heart, like, because I wish for her more and more moments of reprieve. She wishes for herself more and more moments of reprieve, and, to do it in a way that does not, disregard our pain and our fear is so important because I think a lot of us have grown up in ways where our feelings were disregarded or minimized, or we're told it's fine, it's not that bad, or someone has it worse than you, right? So we're not saying like pretend that isn't real for you. We're saying spend a little bit of time in that other thing too. What else is true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chi.
Hmm.
You want to walk us through a little closing practice, or is there anything else you'd like to say?
I think what I'd like to say is I want to share maybe on the next episode or one in the future. What do we do when we tend to be very stoic and fierce and independent and we can push through, and even through hard things, we make sure we're taken care of and other people are taken care of. And we don't actually let ourselves feel the impact of things, or are not even aware that we're not feeling the impact of things, because that takes a toll on our system as well. Right.
Yeah.
I'd love to walk us through some practices that help with that. And we're not always one way or the other. I find that I dance in between the two, depending on what the topic is, what the issue is, what season of my life I'm in. So I think that would be helpful too.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Closing practice. I feel I need this one, so I will walk us through this one, which is the shoulder roll. It's breathing in through the nose, bringing your shoulders up to your ears, breathing out through the mouth, rolling them back and down. And this one is interesting because it relates to our topic. If you do 2 more of these, next time notice bringing your shoulders up to your ears. Notice the tension. And then as you roll them back and down, notice the absence of tension and how that feels. Right? We're practicing noticing moments of the absence of something hard. Because we are lucky enough, most of us here listening, that we are not going through something hard every single moment.
You know, that's really interesting. This morning, I was in a huge amount of pain, and I was having these tiny, like 3 or 4 seconds of reprieve. And
Mhm.
because the pain was so acute previously, those few seconds were like, oh, thank God, like, thank God.
Mhm.
And I think it kind of speaks to if there isn't a huge abundance of pain, I just kind of want to generate more crap, you know?
Yes,
And
this
when
is
it's
shadow
really bad,
admission. We need to have a shadow, what are those called? Confessionals? A shadow
that's
confessional?
right.
And, like,
Yeah.
I don't watch enough reality TV shows, but you do. Like, they have those confessionals, right? You should have a shadow confessional.
Yeah. Well, it's a good sign for me if I'm not, um, if there's no sucker for me in these moments of reprieve. Maybe there wasn't enough pain before, maybe I've been kind of making up this pain in my mind. Um, Easy to
Yes.
do.
Oh, this is, I think, another episode. Some of us have the conditioning. If I'm not in enough pain, it means that I should be doing all these other things. But if
Yeah.
I'm in enough existential pain, emotional pain, physical pain, then maybe I can use that as the reasoning of like not taking the movements towards these other things that I really want. It just like ties into all these pieces. So he says, I love Shadow Confessional. Amazing. We should implement that.
Yeah.
It should be a hotline, call this number and report your shadow confessionals.
I love that. That would be a huge energy moving benefit for everyone if we could all get this stuff out and be a bit more honest about who we are. We'd be using our energy very differently, I think.
Yeah. I think I once actually saw a website that was structured like this. It was like, what's it called? Like anonymous, but it was like where you type in your like most shadow thoughts, right? And
Nice.
you're not like confessing to crimes or anything. Like you're just saying, hey, these are shadow thoughts that I have. I'm not going to act on them, but there's thoughts that I have. And reading people's responses, like, oh, I felt so seen and I felt so
Yeah.
human and I didn't feel like such a monster because there's also this other
Yes.
side to me. Like,
Yeah.
right.
And then
Yeah.
you get to enjoy the other side too, right?
Hmm.
That's a huge bonus of getting all of the icky, not kind, often thoughts out. It gives you space to realize, oh, there's actually this other side of me that's, would be running the show a bit more often if I got all this shadow stuff out in a confessional. That's
Yes.
conscious relationship training.
Pretty
Come
much.
on down.
Shadow
Yeah.
confessional times 10
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah. We should wrap it
Okay.
up. Great. We'll be back on the 18th, February 18th. So feel free, please do send us your topics, things you'd like to hear us talk about, things you'd like practices for. This space is all about being able to give you a subject that's very human and give you some actual practices you can take into your life to make things easier for you or more manageable. And thanks for being here.
I have one more thing.
Yeah.
Like, we need to celebrate. We say, "Yay, we did it." We
Do you
did
have your
a
pom
new
poms?
podcast. Can I go get them?
Yes, please go get
Yes,
your pom
okay.
poms. These have been a theme lately. Georgiana got these pom poms. She's a natural cheerleader. And then Sharon, who may or may not still be watching, also got pom poms. And I saw these pom poms at the store the other day. It's a sign.
Yes, I wanted to cheer because Steph, you and I did a thing. We did a brave
Yeah.
thing in like taking a break. We're like workhorses, you know, like we pride ourselves on working hard. So to take a break before burnout, yay. To come
Yay.
back and figure out how to like do the tech on streaming live on YouTube and Instagram, yay. And like we still, I feel like, and you can let us know, we still captured our usual lightness and like our real selves. So to me, that's a yay. Okay. So
Yay. Yeah. Thank you.
yay.
I'm going
Okay.
to have a coughing fit, so I need to hang up.
Okay.
Thank you guys for being
Bye,
here.
everybody.
See you
See you
next
next
time.
time.
Bye.